All right, so chapter 3, we're going to dive deep into health records. These are super important because they are going to give us indicators on questions that we can ask our client. It's going to give us a health record and a plan. So in chapter 3, the overview is we're going to do introduction to case studies. We're going to go over the forms, the reason for a health record, glossary of symbols, and asking questions. On page 3.3, you are going to see um, the introduction to a case study. I want you to highlight the second paragraph. The holistic approach sees the client in the context of their environment, how they interact with it on the mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual or intuitive planes. The client becomes an active participant in their recovery and healing process by addressing their own lifestyle and making changes where needed in order to achieve a sense of well being. The reflexology therapist helps to facilitate this process and is therefore a facilitator rather than a healer or one who can cure disease. There is no instant cure, as it takes time to build disease. It takes time for the body to be restored back to health and balance. And that's something to pay close attention to, because you can do the best treatment that you can possibly do. If they leave your clinic and they run to McDonald's and get a Big Mac and fries, right? And then they complain about indigestion. I mean, there's only so much that you can do. They have to take responsibility for their actions as well. On um, page 3.5, 3.7 to 3.9, we're going to talk about the forms. And we've got the client waiver, we've got the privacy and consent forms, the health record, the first page, the second page. The first session form is a bigger form, and follow-up session forms are a little bit more condensed, and we're just going to go through them. And on page 3.6 at the bottom, there's reasons for a health record. It's a reference document for future sessions. You're going to be able to track improvements. The reason why that's critical is because a lot of times when um, pain is present, that's all that somebody can focus on. But once it leaves, I mean, they don't think about it anymore. If you take your fingers and you plug your nose and you can't breathe, all that you're going to be thinking about is air. Once you take your hand away, your body breathes automatically and you're not thinking about it anymore, right? Same thing with pain. When it's all that you can think about, it's focused on. But from one session to the next, I guarantee you, your client's going to show up on your doorstep talking about their next big problem if the previous problem has disappeared. So it's going to be able to give you reference point and be able to track improvement. It indicates a date of initial session. It helps you to be alert for tender reflexes based on clients presenting problems. It establishes a professional standard, helps you to recognize and refer the client to other health practitioners if it's not working, and helps you establish short-term and long-term goals for the treatment plan. Excellent. Okay, we are also going to talk about the glossary of symbols on page 310. And the reason why that's important is because when you're taking a record, it's just a quick glance, and so that you can see what is going on. Glossary of symbols is going to be done once, and it's going to be at the very front of the book. So going through the forms again, on page 3.7, we talk about what is your occupation. Now, the reason that that's important is because if they're sitting at a desk all day, it might make sense that their spine is tender, or if they're complaining about wrist pain, we could be focusing on posture, right? Are you in good health? This is a critical question because it's from the patient's perspective. There can be very healthy people that are feeling sick. So they're going to the doctor, they're saying that nothing is wrong, yet they don't feel good. On the flip side of that, it could be somebody that has every illness under the sun, but in their mind, they're still healthy. So you need to take it from a client's perspective. Are you undergoing other therapies? Now, if somebody is going to massage, chiropractor, acupuncture, physiotherapy, and then they show up in your clinic, your body needs time to release toxins. If somebody's going for massage, I usually recommend that they give at least 48 hours between a massage and a reflexology session. Chiropractor is a little bit different. Acupuncture, again, at least 48 hours between sessions, because if they're doing too many things, they're going to put themselves into a healing crisis. Um, what else are you doing for your health? That's going to give you an idea of what they're doing for nutrition. Are they focusing? Are they working with a naturopath? Are they um, watching their diet? Are they taking supplements? You can also um, understand that if they do yoga or meditation, or what they do to what their lifestyle's like. Are they go 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 go, or are they taking time to incorporate self-care into their life? What are your objections and expectations for the session? If you know this and you're able to help them reach their goal, that's awesome. Sometimes they say just curious, or just to relax, right? When did you last visit your doctor and the reason? Sometimes people forget, and it's like, oh yeah. And then you get to figure things out. List past surgeries um, and injuries. That's because we can detect the tenderness. So if somebody has scar tissue in that area, we can be a little bit more sensitive and adjust our pressure when we go over the spot. If Are you taking medications? We ask that question because um, it could affect the tenderness in the foot. If somebody is taking painkillers, they're not going to feel much tenderness at all. But if they the other thing that's really important with medications is looking at the side effects, right? So sometimes people could be battling symptoms, and if you look at the side effects, it's prescription induced. So if something is causing night sweats, for example, and they keep on showing up and it's night sweats, I know my dad got terrible night sweats from Tylenol, well, or acetaminophen. Sorry, it wasn't Tylenol. It was anything with acetaminophen. And so if it's triggered by a pharmaceutical and they're continuing to take the pharmaceutical, there isn't much that you can do. They have to work with their doctor in order to get that adjusted, right? Do you sleep well? Most people without pain or with pain have an interrupted sleep. So it also is an indicator of excessive stress. If we ask if they suffer from anxiety or worry, that's because we need to pay attention to our pressure. Now, somebody with anxiety, you want to have very light pressure because their head, if they feel pain, is automatically going to spiral into the future, and they're going to try to figure out what's wrong with them. Somebody with anxiety usually just doesn't think, oh, I've got an imbalance. They're automatically dying, right? They're going worst case scenario. So you don't want to put them into a situation where they feel pain, because the minute that they think that something's wrong, their head's going to create a story and you're going to put them into a sympathetic mode. Light pressure with anybody with anxiety or worry. Is your blood pressure normal, high, low, stable, erratic? If somebody has blood pressure, they need to keep on monitoring it because reflexology is designed to restore balance. So you need to make sure that they're checking it. Are you pregnant? And if so, which trimester? Pregnancy is a thing that has been debated in the reflexology industry for, I'm sure, the very beginning. If they are in the first trimester of pregnancy, they are at the highest risk of having a miscarriage. Now, if you go and you do a reflexology session on somebody in the first trimester and they miscarry, it is human nature to assume responsibility. If you are going to assume responsibility, or if the mother is going to feel like the reflexology session had something to do with the baby being a miscarriage, it is something that I highly recommend not doing, because that's just something that weighs heavy and you don't want to deal with it. So if that is you, you need to say no to doing pregnancies in the first trimester. If you're nervous, avoiding all reproductive reflexes during a pregnancy is highly recommended, or just saying no, one of the two. Allergies and sinus conditions, that's important because we have to make sure our reflexology rooms, are scent free. So there's a lot of people that use essential oils. I have clients that cannot stand the smell of lavender. Others can't stand the smell of peppermint. And it's important to make sure that your environment is as scent free as possible. Do you wear prosthesis? That again is an indicator of tender reflexes. Are there any current problems with your health that you want to discuss? That just gives you the opportunity to discuss any other things that might be going on. And on page 3.9, I want you to highlight the questions there, because that gives you some good questions to ask your clients when they are in the chair. Okay. All right. And that is the health record. On page 310, we're going to get into the glossary of symbols. Again, you have the form that you've printed off, and we will take time to create the symbols that are going to work for you. I want you to highlight reasons for a reflexology treatment. Page 311, the reflexology therapist questions, highlight that. And there's a good little acronym, Old Dr. Vicara, is the things that can be triggers for questions. So the onset of the condition, the location, the duration, is the pain radiating, the frequency, intensity, character of it, is it dull or is it sharp, the associated symptoms with it, the relieving factors, what makes it feel better, and the aggravating factors, what makes it feel worse. Now, on page 312, if you take a look at it, you can see what a glossary of symbols looks like in a treatment plan, the initial treatment record. And on page 313, you can see what the notes look like from a case study. After we do an initial session, which is on page 312, which we are heavily relying on the client feedback, if you go to page 314, the second session is going to be documented on the alternate health record. And we're going to talk about how they felt the last treatment, how they felt since the treatment, how they feel today, observations of the client, foot observations. So that's going to be foot conditions in there. Findings during the session, we're going to go into the treatment plan, and then what you did, action taken, what were the results. So that's more client feedback, client comment. Sometimes when you're working on feet, they'll say, oh, they feel it in other parts of the body. That's important to document. Or they will give you feedback on specific reflexes. And in the final observations, how they've covered it. Now, the way that you store your case studies is covered on page 315 of the manual. And when you go into the student login, there is a whole video on a treatment plan that you can discuss as well. So a treatment plan is how I work with clients. So we've already talked about the initial health record, which is the first 2 pages. You're going to take the student waiver form. You're going to do the privacy forms. You're going to document on an initial treatment plan that looks similar to this. Your very first session, which is basically just telling what the client's feet look like and what the client feedback is, if anything. Sometimes they fall asleep. I'm telling you, you get zero information. It's useless. But after the client goes away, you're going to sit down with the health record. You are going to look in page 2, well, page 1, 2, and see what conditions they wrote on their health record. You're going to go into chapter 16, and in chapter 16, it's going to tell you what systems and reflexes to work for specific conditions. And I know that we don't treat for specific conditions, but we go into chapter 16 for specific conditions, and so that we can understand how the imbalances are working in the body. Once that happens, we can document it on what I call a treatment plan. Now, when your client comes back for their second session, you have this sheet so that you can see it. When you are working these reflexes, so you're not going to understand this right now, but when you get a little bit further along, it's going to be clear. Red is key reflexes. Green is additional reflexes. So if I'm working on a client, this right here is a brain reflex. Okay, these top of the toes. If I'm working on Joe and I'm pressing on his brain reflex, because in his health record it said that according to one of the conditions he had, that this was going to be tender, I would say, is it tender in this spot? He would say yes or no. If he said no, I've got a few questions to ask myself. The first one, am I on the right spot? Is he on medication that would numb the pain? Is it tight? Is it squishy? And so by doing this, you are training yourself to understand what the reflexes feel like when they are healthy and when there is an imbalance. Plus, you're training yourself to make sure you're actually on the right reflex. Now, brain is a pretty easy reflex, but the pituitary, which is right here, it's the swirl in the middle of the big toe. Well, I mean, you're never going to meet a person with a foot that looks like this. So the swirl in the middle of the toe could very well be in zone 3 of the big toe. Or I've met people that have the swirl like in zone 5 of the big toe. So it's understanding how the toe works and then compressing in there. Now, this is an additional reflex, and with every client that we have, we work 4 reflexes. It's going to be pituitary, adrenal, solar plexus, and hypothalamus. Those words are not going to mean anything to you right now, but if you listen to the replay after you've gone through the course, it's going to make sense. So right here is the pituitary. Here is the hypothalamus. Solar plexus is going to be right here. And the adrenal reflex is going to be right here. We work those 4 points on every single foot, no matter what. So again, pituitary, hypothalamus, solar plexus, and adrenals are going to be highlighted on every treatment plan because they are usually the most tender. And we're going to go through that in detail as we go through every part of all the body systems. We're going to be creating a treatment plan for each one of you. So the treatment plan that I told you to print off looks a little bit different than this, but it's going to work the same. All right. So we're going to do a check-in, make sure that everybody is doing good. Then we're going to check out. I'm going to want to know what was your big takeaway from today. Do you have any burning questions and how you're feeling now? And then coming up next week, I recommend throughout the week, read through chapters 1 to 3 and do your workbook so that we're all on track. We're going to check in to get any questions that you have from your homework, go over that. We're going to cover chapter 4, the structure and function of the foot, chapter 5, the foot checkup and assessment, and we're going to start diving into the introduction to anatomy and physiology, and then we'll do another checkout. Perfect. Way to go. You've made it through the first day of class.